Come by the Messiah. We're going to have another series that we're starting. And I believe these lessons are going to go, there's going to be at least 3 of these lessons, maybe more, depending on how how God leads my spirit. But these lessons that we're starting in this new series are going to start with GVR, which represents God's vengeance is real. Okay? We're covering this lesson because God has placed before me the fact that we got to keep our eyes open to the deception of the beast and Babylonian system. You hear a lot of talk nowadays regarding what they call climate change or global warming. And the heathens, as they mention climate change and global warming, they will never acknowledge the spiritual side of these occurrences happening. When we look in the Torah, God told the descendants of Israel, Jacob, that he is removing the people from amongst the land of Canaan, those Canaanite people, because the land is spewing them out because of their immorality, the immoral, idolatrous acts that they engaged in, from sexual immorality to worshiping idols to sorcery, soothsaying, all these particular activities that they engaged in. God told the descendants of Israel that the land is spewing them out. He is removing them from amongst the promised land, the land of Canaan. And so I want you to understand that as we see these so-called natural disasters occur, there's something much deeper going on besides what the beast system is labeling climate change, right? So let me give you a scripture reference to back that up. Okay? If you want to read up on the land spewing inhabitants out, go read Leviticus chapter 18 in its entirety. Okay? And specifically when you get to verse 24 through 28, you'll see what Adonai is saying because of their immoral acts and behavior. And he's warning the children of Israel to not engage in them. But he's saying that the land is spewing them out because they engaged in all these different immoral activities. And this also includes injustice. So what we're going to do in these series, and let me just put this up here so we'll have it as a reminder. So maybe I'll put it over here. So we'll understand that there is a scriptural reference for spiritual immorality being linked to nature and the land spewing the people out. So as we focus on God's vengeance, I want to, for this lesson, focus on Jeremiah chapter 30, verse 16, where Adonai Elohim is letting Jacob know, I will plunder those who plundered you, Jacob, okay? And you can turn to Jeremiah chapter 30 and read it in its entirety. But there are 2 specific scriptures that will help to encourage you, because the topics we're going to cover is we're going to point out the injustice. We're not going to focus on the one immoral aspect, spiritual immorality that we're focusing on for this lesson is injustice, specifically regarding the police shootings or shootings of unarmed Black men and women, okay? And how soon thereafter there's a huge natural disaster that hits the whore of Babylon. And I want you guys to focus on this so that we'll understand, Jacob, that God hears our cries and God is carrying out his plans and his vengeance. It's not shown in the world news that way, but we know on the spiritual level what Adonai Elohim is doing. And to keep you encouraged, because us going over this, I know it may etch up some depressing feelings for those descendants of Israel, because these events are, they're tragic, and they hurt us spiritually, they hurt us mentally and emotionally. But I want you to be encouraged by what Adonai Elohim says in Jeremiah chapter 30, specifically verse 11 and verse 16. In verse 11, he states, I am with you to save you, for I will make a full end of all the nations where I scattered you. But I will not make a full end of you, for I will discipline you justly, but will not leave you unpunished. So, descendants of Israel, black and brown descendants of Jacob, please understand that we have to abide by God's standard and cleave to his commands and his ordinance so that we can be partakers of the blessings of Abraham, our forefathers. So understand that even though these things are carried out, God still is watching over us. Okay? If we are to perish due to some of these natural disasters that are occurring, no fret. We will go to the bosom of Abraham, to our resting place, until we meet again. Oh, and meet our other family members or what have you later. God continues to say, when you look at verse 16 in Jeremiah chapter 30, he says, yet all who devoured you will be devoured, and all your foes, all of them, will go into captivity. Those plundering you will be plundered, and all preying on you I give as prey. So keep these scriptures in mind as we go over the plundering of the whore of Babylon as it's related to all the injustices that have happened because of the shooting or the murders of unarmed people or attacks on them. So let's cover this first one here. First major event was Trayvon Martin, February 26 of 2012. There were a total of 100 tropical storms and hurricanes that hit the United States. There were a total of 233 deaths. One of the major hurricanes during this time period was called Hurricane Debbie, which occurred on June 23rd through 27th of 2012. It caused $40 million in damage in Florida just from floods alone. But for the entirety of the United States, it caused $250 million in damages. Okay? You had two other hurricanes, Hurricane Isaac, which occurred on August 12th through September 1st, and then Hurricane Sandy from October 22nd through November 2nd. And this went all the way up the East Coast, all the way up to New Jersey, okay? That's rare in itself. Most hurricanes don't go that far up, inflicting huge amounts of damage, but they cause multi-millions of dollars of damage, okay? We'll go over here to Mike Brown. His life, he was murdered on August 9th of 2014, and then Mr. Eric Garner on July 14th of 2014. During this year, the U.S. encountered 929 tornadoes, right? We're just talking about tornadoes. There was $634,475 million in damages just in that year alone. Worldwide, from tornadoes, there were 74 deaths, but for the U.S., there were 74 deaths worldwide, but 47 in the U.S. So here you got millions upon millions of dollars in damages and loss of lives, dozens. Here I wanted to also mention, I know most of the events that happen when we talk about unarmed people being shot or murdered, we usually don't cover a lot of our Hebrew women a lot. But I want you guys to go to this article that is titled 50 Black Women Have Been Killed by U.S. Police Since 2015. Okay? So just look at that and look at some of the incidents, and you'll see a lot of the women here. Some of them had mental illness. Some of them were perfectly fine. And they themselves might have had family members to call the police just to do a wellness check, and their life ended up being taken. Now we know, like Breonna Taylor's, Tatiana Jefferson, and Sandra Bland, which in July 13th of 2015, her life was taken. She was murdered. Um, a lot of people want to argue the logistics of it, but everything that's said about that doesn't make sense. How a woman can climb up to the ceiling and hang some trash bags up and it sustain her whole body. Someone took her life, and that's an injustice, and God is going to deal with and probably has already dealt with those involved in that region. I want to continue as we look at several incidents that happened here. Murders of Alton Sterling on July 5th of 2016, Philando Castile on July 6th of 2016, Terrence Crutcher on September 16th of 2016. We also have Mont on September 20th of 2016. In 2016, we had the first above average hurricane season since 2000. And you had huge hurricanes that happened between January uh, and, and through November 30th of 2016. One of the biggest ones they had was Hurricane Matthews. It lasted from September 28th through October 8th of 2016. There was a total of 603 deaths. Okay? This is pretty unusual to have over 500 deaths to occur due to hurricane in an instance like that in this current modern time, daytime. Okay? Now, we've mentioned this before about the murder of Mr. George Floyd that occurred on May 25th of 2020. In a lesson that we titled, Where Should You Stand Regarding the Palestinian-Israeli Conflict? And we mentioned how on August the 21st, there were hurricanes that hit Louisiana. And two hurricanes ended up intersecting. And where they intersected in a township called Chauvin. Now, Chauvin is the name of the officer who murdered Mr. George Floyd. It's as if Adonai is saying, like, look, this is a part of my judgment on you, whore of Babylon. You see, Adonai is in control of everything. And when a nation began to rebel against him, or even fight against or be hostile towards the descendants of Israel, he eases up his shield of protection over that nation so that the enemy, Satan, can wreak havoc. And this was like him saying, like, this is what this is about. Okay? This destruction that is about to occur to the whore of Babylon due to these hurricanes this year, it's about this specific incident. Okay? Now we can go on. I wanted to put a footnote here because I remember there was the huge winter storm that occurred in February of 2021, where there was a power outage in Texas, huge power outage, and it was like an ice snowstorm that happened, pretty rare. A month before that happened in Texas you had a gentleman named Mr. Patrick Warren, where I believe family members called for a wellness check on him. He was mentally ill, and the police took his life in January 2021. But in February 2021, during this winter storm, they had estimated at the time there were at least 246 deaths. But by the end of it, when the estimates were all said and done, you could add 702 more deaths to that, making a total of 948 people to lose their lives from this random, unusual winter storm that hit Texas. Okay, Body Messiah, I'm going to go to the next poster board, okay? So hold on one moment. Okay, Body Messiah, let's continue here. I had to put my note here of Leviticus 18 so we don't lose sight of this actually being a spiritual link to natural disasters, okay? Now let's continue. We have here Mr. Jalen Walker, whose life was taken on June 27th of 2022, and then Mr. Donovan Lewis of August 30th of 2022. Their lives were taken by officers in Ohio, okay? So I'm trying to show you and focus and zoom in on specific areas. So from September the 23rd of 2022 through September 30th, there were some tornadoes, and specifically in this region of Ohio, there were 33 lives lost. Okay, I mean there were 33 tornadoes that occurred in this region. Okay, and in Ohio. Now, if we look at the hurricanes, this is one of the largest hurricanes of all times. Okay, Hurricane Ian caused 161 deaths. It caused 113 billion in damages, right? That's billions with a B. 113 billion in damages. Now here there was a winter storm, another winter storm now. It occurred in December 23rd of 2022. And it crossed the states of North Carolina, South Carolina, Texas, and Georgia with 39 deaths. There was 8.5 billion with a B in damages. Okay? So these are multi-billion-dollar storms that are occurring, all right, in the U.S. Now let's go to Mr. Rashid Carter. Now these gentlemen that I'm going to cover here are associated with, this gentleman was lynched or murdered in Mississippi. These two gentlemen down here, by the grace of the Most High God, they survived, but they were attacked and assaulted severely by police in Mississippi. Okay? And we know the national news doesn't cover stories about specifically our Hebrew brothers when they've been attacked and sisters and lynched, but lynchings still do occur in America. Okay? It's glossed over. It's not talked about. The only way you'll find them if they are covered by black news stations, or even in the case of Mr. Rashid Carter, you don't see him covered in even black news stations except for those who are in depth and leading the cause in the way for black and brown Hebrews on the internet through Facebook, through Instagram, through YouTube or TikTok. Okay, so Mr. Rashid Carter was lynched in Smith County, Mississippi. And that same year, Mississippi had more tornadoes than any state in the United States. There were a total of 184, okay, that occurred. But Mississippi had the most. And it's due to their spiritual rebellion, because there's still a huge throughout the U.S., not just Mississippi. I'm not going to pick on the South because we know it occurs in the North too. When you got Minneapolis and Minnesota and different areas like that, where there are strongholds of white supremacy linked to Baal worship. So these two gentlemen here, Mr. Michael Jenkins and Eddie Parker. These two gentlemen were assaulted by police on January 24th of 2023. And I want to mention on March the 24th through 27th, there was an outbreak of tornadoes that killed at least 26 people in and around Smith County. Okay? On June 19th of 2023, there were multiple tornadoes that hit Rankin County. Okay? These two gentlemen were assaulted in Rankin County. Mr. Rashid Carter was lynched in Smith County, right? So there have been multiple reports that you will find on the internet covered by strong Hebrew men and women who speak about this stronghold of white supremacy here. Body of Messiah, let me just mention something about this. The fact that we know that these incidents are not covered on national news or even some of the black news stations. God's justice is real. And the irony of this thing is that even the federal government, even our government system, the Whore of Babylon, won't even acknowledge this. And this incident here for Mr. Rashid Carter, what I found on Mr. Rashad Ritchie's show, I think he mentioned it. Queen, I hope I'm saying her name right, Amadayu Shakur. She and he had reported how one of the sheriffs in this town, when Mr. Rashid Carter tried to go to the police station to get help, they rejected him. And probably someone on the police force or multiple people partook in this lynching, because it took for a veterinarian to call the FBI because human remains was found in the digestive tract of the dog. Okay. Now, with that information being shared and told, why is there not a national outcry? Why has the federal government swooped in to investigate these counties and their police stations? We understand why. Because we are continuously battling against the beast system and Babylonian system for justice. But God's revenge is sure. When he says he's going to bring a full end of all those nations, he knew he would have to thousands of years ago, just like he knew our ancestors, the descendants of Israel's ancestors, would be hard-headed when it came to idol worship. Okay? So that's why we have to keep our focus on God and his standard. Well, Body Messiah, I'm going to move over here to cover fires. Now, in the present wake of all the hot heat waves that are tearing up the U.S. and Europe, let's go back to where there were California fires. Okay. Now I'm going to cover the progression of some of these fires to seem like they have slowed up, and I'm going to tell you the reason why I believe so. But let me mention that there's a sister named Miss Deborah who has a show called Redirecting. And she covered things regarding the heat wave and all that stuff. And she reminded us of this scripture that it seems similar to. When you read Revelation chapter 16, specifically verse 8, it talks about a bowl of wrath that's being poured out by the angel, where men's skin would be scorched by the sun, okay, by the heat. So I just want to put this down here just as a reminder to say it's amazing how God's judgment fall in line with some of the prophetic scriptures of Revelation here. All right. In that incident of where there's going to be bowls of wrath poured out, it's talking about the heat scorching the skin of man, and man being rebellious and not repenting of their sins and their idolatry. Okay? Now, I want you to notice with the California wildfires, in 2020, there was a total of 9,900 wildfires that burned a total of 4.3 million acres. Okay? In 2021, there was a total of 8,835 fires, which burned 2,568,948 acres. Okay? Looks like it's decreasing, huh? In 2022, there was a total of 7,667 fires, burning a total of 363,939 acres, right? Like a steady decrease. 2 years ago in California, ironically, they started a committee, a reparations committee, to analyze reparations for descendants of slaves. 2 years ago. I believe, Tasha, that this decrease in the fires and wildfires in California occurred because of this attempt to start analyzing, making amends or reparation or repair to the descendants of slaves who are actual descendants of Israel. Okay? So there's an attempt of them trying to appear to repair the atrocities that occurred and the hardships that occurred against descendants of slaves that carry on today. So you're going to find this direct correlation happening a lot. And if California don't want to go through it like the rest of the nation and other countries are going to have to come to terms with reparations. If they don't, oh well, God is going to continue to pour out his judgment um, until our Messiah returns. Now, notice that these other places here, we have France, Spain, Italy. We have Anchorage, Alaska, and Canada. When you look at Anchorage, Alaska, and Canada, most people don't pay attention to them. But there's a huge uh, 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 volume of Baal worship linked to white supremacy in these nations also. Okay, in these countries across Alaska and Canada. During this time, since wildfires have been occurring, that 1.6 million wildfires have occurred. Okay, we're talking about the wildfires. We're not talking about acreage. We're talking about 1.6 million wildfires. Okay, there have been a lot of atrocities to occur to Black and brown Hebrews amongst these countries here, Alaska and Canada, where the indigenous people have been mistreated and tormented, children being snatched away for re-education, and children being murdered. They're uncovering and unburying stuff where some of them were snatched from the indigenous people and told they were forced to re-educate them, and if they didn't abide by certain rules, the children were in those schools, and they have little burial lands around those schools of these children's body and the unmarked graves. So these so-called missionaries, so-called Christian missionaries, were tormenting these children and their families. Okay? So amends have to be made for that. Notice heat waves throughout the U.S. and Europe now, where literally scorching temperatures of 120 degrees have been reached. They did an aerial view of the thermal for Spain, and they were talking about it looks like the ground can reach up to 140 degrees. This is unheard of, body Messiah. But I believe it's a carrying out of God's judgment. And when you see these things correlating and falling hand in hand, don't be caught unawares or sleeping, okay? Don't be overtaken by this strong, strange delusion of thinking that everything is okay and imagining that America is not the whore of Babylon, because she is. These judgments are happening because of the atrocities that have occurred, and God expects amends to be made by the Messiah. We're going to cover another lesson here soon, lesson 2. But I just want you to stay encouraged. I want you to understand that God is allowing this thing to happen for a reason, and we have to be aware and stay diligent, body of Messiah, to hold on to his standards and his commands and his ordinance in these latter days, and give all glory to him, because he's the only thing, the only one who will carry us through. Well, body of Messiah, I hope you've learned a lot from this, and I hope you're able to hold on to some information that will draw you closer to the Most High God. And like I always say to you, may Adonai Elohim cover and surround you and your family, shield and protect you all, envelop you all with his shalom peace. Goodbye.